Hello everyone, welcome, and we are doing the end of June 2016 Alliance of Independent Authors members only Q&A with me, Joanna Penn, and Orna Ross. Hi Orna.
Hi Joanna, hello everyone.
I can't believe it's the middle of the year. It is horrible, it's kind of scary, horrible.
Well, particularly here in London at the moment, because we're supposed to be having a summer and it feels like it's already winter, so it's not helping.
Oh, and there's also the other thing in London right now and the rest of the country. Yeah, so we're just going to tackle it straight on. We're going to go straight into Brexit. Both of us have had questions about this in the last, well, only week or less than a week. In fact, this only happened on Friday. It's now Tuesday. So let's talk about Brexit. So the UK has voted in a referendum that the country has, well, 52% of the country has a preference for leaving the EU. That doesn't mean we've left the EU. And even if we go ahead with this decision, it has to get through Parliament. Our Prime Minister's resigned. This is not a done deal. So let's just say that up front. But the implications, potential implications, if Britain leaves the EU, we're not going to talk politics about Ireland or Scotland or anything like that. We're only going to talk about the impact, potential impact on authors in the UK, in Europe, and or other non-EU authors selling to the UK. So what is your opinion on? And it's only an opinion, Orna.
Yeah, it's not even an opinion, I would go so far as to say, because I really honestly think it's way too soon to discuss any of the ramifications. We have to wait and see what's going to happen in terms of treaties and agreements and everything else. For people who sell books, tax is the immediate thing that comes to mind. Because we sell digital products, in a way, it's a much less tricky and difficult thing. I'm speaking now, of course, of most people. Most of us are selling digital products globally, and so those who do that in that way are less affected than, say, a trade publisher with a lot of stock and physical goods, and a bookseller and a distributor and all the other players in publishing. So for authors, the EU has already been, for UK authors and for everybody, tax, VAT has already, and the EU has already been a vexing question, to the degree that most self-publishers now just don't sell into EU countries because of the VAT situation in the EU. This is just one of the ways in which the EU has not been particularly friendly to small business. From ALLi's point of view, we will be monitoring the situation very carefully, working out what it means for authors. I think, what we can be sure of is that writers will continue to be people who reach out to the rest of the world, people who see themselves as world citizens, as part of the great family of human beings, rather than anything else. We're communicators. We want to break through borders, not the other way around. And already here in London, we are seeing people talking about how they will tackle things like translated work coming into the UK if this happens, if that happens, if the other happens. But there is no point at this stage, I think, in speculating too much. We will have a sort of a statement next Monday. I do a sort of a first Monday of the month every month on the blog, and we'll just talk in detail then about exactly what it means for ALLi and our members.
Yeah, and I think the only immediate impact is on exchange rates and the payments that people will be getting this month, maybe not even next month. So, for example, our Amazon payments, those of us who earn more in US dollars, like me, will actually get more money. Yeah. The UK authors who get paid in pounds with a US dollar exchange rate, because the pound has dropped, we will get more money this month. Now, obviously, I would rather get less money and stay in Europe, but the pound has dropped. So for a UK author this month, you will probably get more money, and depending if the pound is still weak against the dollar, the same will happen next month. However, if you are a US author or other author in other countries, you will get less money based on your UK sales because of that exchange rate difference. But for most of us, this is not a big deal. And it kind of backs up what we always say, which never rely on one market or one store or one method or one income stream, because things happen, you know, things happen. So if you have, you know, income in Canadian dollars and Australian dollars and American dollars and pounds and euro, you're going to, everything will fall out in the wash as such.
Eventually, and there are ups and downs, and markets overreact, politicians overreact,
exactly.
newspapers overreact, and you know, the commentariat will be kept very nicely busy for the next 5 years while all of this
forever.
Yeah, they're never out of business.
Yeah, and what
that's
I say on, sorry,
to some degree too, you know. So interesting times yet again. That's all.
Yeah, I would say on the VAT thing, I think once a VAT or a sales tax is applied, you ain't never going to get that taken off. The question is whose coffers the money goes into. So I would not expect, even if we leave Europe, that the VAT on digital sales will suddenly be lifted. I suspect it would be something that would remain. So essentially, I don't think there will be much changing for, as you said, those of us who sell globally, digitally, and don't have to have all these arrangements with EU. So yeah, in general, it's more of a life effect than a business effect.
Yes, and a cultural perhaps effect. And again, it's way too soon to say that is actually going to be the outcome, because there were many reasons for people voting to leave, and the one that has been very much highlighted is the sort of the little Englander mentality, but there was more going on there than that. So certainly the conversation has got more interesting. We can say that for sure.
Yeah. And whatever happens, what do? We keep writing.
Publishing.
And publishing. So Orna, what else have you been up to this month apart from watching Brexit news?
Well, pretty much writing and publishing. This is a nice time of the year for me from that perspective, in that conference season's over, as I'm always saying, and there's that lull in between for summertime. Summertime is when I get most of my own personal writing done. So as everybody who knows me knows, I have been struggling with the Go Creative series, and I'm very happy today to have seen 2 of them off, and also a book of poetry. So yeah, this is just happened to catch me on a day where, you know, they cross the line. It always feels good. But tomorrow I have to get back to the next one. So
yeah. Oh yeah, it never finishes. Absolutely. Well, for fiction, I've done a short story, which I don't do very often, a commissioned short story based on the Sunken Egypt exhibition at the British Museum, which is awesome. I'm going to have to get membership there, because this is the third or fourth thing I've written. I've written 3 novels based on the British things at the British Museum.
They should give you a lifetime membership.
They should. But also, very excitingly, and this will be a tip as well as a little self-promotion. Is that round the wrong way? But
no, it's perfect.
Oh, good. Well, the Successful Author Mindset, this is the book, and this is the workbook version. So I thought if people watching the video can see there, the book is a normal 5x8 book, and the workbook is a 6x9, and it's actually got, and this is a really good tip, you know, to add, you know, sort of, and there's lines there you can see. So it's essentially the same text of the book with extra lines and pages for people to write the answers to the questions. And you know, it's only an extra, not very much money, less than $100 to get a second print version made with these extra lined pages. All you do is indicate to your designer, or do it yourself, where the lines are. So I think why wouldn't you, anyone writing self-help books or anything that has questions, do 2 versions, a book and a workbook. You're doing workbooks as well, aren't you?
I've done it for the free writing notebook. I've had that for a long time, and again, it's being upgraded in this round. But yeah, I think it's a great idea. It works really well. It's very easy to do, and it's another.
And it costs you barely nothing, and you make that money back within, you know, 10 sales basically. So
people like them,
yeah.
Or they don't at all. You know, it's not everybody who buys a book buys a workbook, obviously, but those who do are very connected. So I think it's another really great way of deepening that connection with your reader as well. There's a real involvement if they're filling out the workbook that you've designed, or if they're free writing in your notebook rather than free writing in their own kind of A4 pages at home. It brings things to another level of connection. And I love hearing from people about the notebook and, you know, how they feel about it and so on.
That's
So it's
cool.
lovely. Yeah.
And the other thing I did, which we discussed last time, I think, is I recorded the audiobook myself in my cupboard.
How did that go?
It was
really curious.
It was great. It was really good. I just shut myself in with all the clothes, because if people don't know, the important thing is kind of having a dampening audio effect so that the noise doesn't get in. But I'm also selling it direct on the creativepenn.com, and I've set up a new audio page. So this is the plan now. I'm just going to record everything. And last time, as we discussed last year or the year before, that we paid for recording studios to get ACX quality, but by selling it direct on my website, I don't need to get the level of quality for ACX guidelines, although it's still good quality. Obviously, it's not mastered in the way that they're doing it. So I'm selling it direct as a bundle with the ebook, so it's a good value. So we'll see what happens, but I would encourage, and the reason, if people are wondering, is because I have no control over the price at ACX Audible, and because of their exclusivity agreement now, and the lowering of income that seems to be happening in audiobooks because of the aggressive promotions, I figure it's best to do this for non-fiction. However, my fiction, I've got one in the works at the moment, also through ACX. So
interesting. Well, you've always been a pioneer with audio, so it'll be interesting to see how this goes. And it's certainly, I think we have a question about audio here in tonight. But audio is changing rapidly. I mean, it was only 6 months ago, or 6 months to a year ago, certainly, it was a good bet for an indie, even though it was expensive up front. The returns were good, you know, so if it was worth going for. It's kind of getting harder and harder to justify the level of investment, because the return is just not great, is it?
No. So that's been a real change. And I think this is why it's so important to keep up with whatever's latest. You know, it can be tiring to keep up with whatever's latest, but things really do change. I mean, if you listen to this chat a year ago, we would have said, yay, ACX, go for it, you know.
It's not so tiring. They only have to tune in here once a month.
Or I talk about this type of stuff every week on my podcast, so you know that people can find out. Exactly. Okay, so let's get into questions. Unless are there any ALLi updates or?
I think we've a good few questions tonight, and we can come around to that at the end if we need to. There are things happening, of course there are, but we'll see how we get on. Let's get into the questions. And if any of the listeners have a question or a comment on a question, do feel free to pop those into us. Okay.
Go. Oh, right, as in live?
In live, yes. If there are ALLi members there listening to us, which I believe there are, please do feel you can ask your questions.
Excellent. All right, let's go. Janet says, how did you find your beta readers, and how many do you have? Are they all readers or are some writers? I'm in critique groups with other writers, but not all members give me useful feedback, so they would not be good beta readers.
Well, how to find them is definitely a matter of community and awareness of your own genre, awareness of your own book, and what you need from your reader. So a bad beta reader is useless, you know, and what bad can mean lots of different things. You can have a very attentive reader who doesn't give the right kind of attention. So you want somebody who's experienced in your genre, who generally reads those books and enjoys them, but who also has a sense of, you know, how a book is constructed, what should be there, what shouldn't be there, because very often what we don't see as writers, you know, it's not so much even sometimes what's in there as what's not there, what's missing in terms of pacing or whatever for fiction, or in terms of, you know, great big holes in the logic or whatever for nonfiction. So I know that a huge number of our members find their beta readers from the ALLi group and the ALLi membership. That's one of the great kind of useful things about it. I myself personally have a few trusted people that read my books, read all my books. I have two who read everything across the board: poetry, fiction, nonfiction. One of them is an older woman, and one is a younger one, and they're fantastic. And then depending on whether it is poetry, fiction, or nonfiction, it goes to different people at that point. And different books need also more, you know, sometimes with a book, you know, it's not quite there, or there's something wrong. Other times you feel, I'm really happy with this and it doesn't need so much. But certainly when you're starting out for your first book and second book and a third book, as you know, get as many as you can and as many different kinds of, as much feedback as you can. Who do you use now, Joanna?
I don't use beta readers in the way that you describe. I only use beta readers who are experts in an area. So for Destroyer of Worlds, which was set in India, I had an Indian reader read it to give me opinions on the Indian perspective, that I hadn't made any cultural faux pas. And she gave, you know, she basically said, you did it great, except that you can't get that kind of taxi on that corner in Mumbai. So if you change it to this type of taxi, and I was like, that's cool. So, and also for Risen Gods, I had a volcanologist, someone who specializes in volcanoes, and also a Maori. So again, a cultural read. So I only really use beta readers for that. I'm kind of at the point where in fact, I've always preferred to pay editors, and I'll pay multiple. At the beginning, I had like 4 different editors go through my books. I'd rather pay a professional than take advice from not professionals. So that's just my process basically. And for nonfiction, I for this latest book, for the Successful Author Mindset, I did have, I guess, technically beta readers, as in people who read it before release, but I didn't make any changes based on their comments. It was more to make me feel like I'd managed to do a decent job. So yeah.
And your approach in that book is interesting, because I'm one of the people who had the privilege of reading it, which is that you've kind of written it knowing there's going to be a second edition. So you will be taking the feedback almost like the book is the beta for the next edition or whatever. And I think that too is becoming, it's worth mentioning just as we pass by this question, that is becoming something that people are doing more and more, that the first publication, and particularly of an ebook, is not necessarily the final publication anymore. Sometimes people put it out. And I remember last year when I was doing the studio readings of my stuff, it was a great editing process, because the whole process of reading, I would read aloud, I thought, but when you're actually reading aloud into a microphone for an audiobook, it's like, you know, being at a festival and doing a reading. Suddenly all those mistakes just jump up and bite you. So so I guess everybody then has a slightly different approach to this, as to everything. There are no rules, but do find I suppose the bottom line is find somebody you trust to actually give you decent, good feedback. And also, equally important, really open yourself to hearing it. Don't be defensive, go away and kick the cat or whatever, but sit down and listen to everything that's said and take it in a learning sort of spirit.
But never give your book to someone who doesn't read that genre. Like, I would never give one of my, you know, thrillers to a literary author and ask for their literary feedback, or to a children's author, or don't give me your children's book. You know, I don't even have children. So, you know, that's super important, because you have to get feedback from people who love your genre, not just anyone. So I think that's probably the most important thing, and why I'm not a member of a writers group. Because
one of the reasons.
one of the reasons. Don't play well with others. Anyway, moving on. Natalie says, after a rather unflattering review, I guess I made mistakes in the way I wrote the book, which I think is a very great thing to realise. And a lot of indies do learn by publishing and then realising that it's not that great. So good. So what can I instruct a potential editor or line editor to do to make sure my book becomes better to read without losing the essence of the story? And it looks like the tense is the problem. So is using past, present, or future tense really that bad? Well, obviously you have to use one of those tenses. I can't see how a flashback or something that's historically in the past can be written in a present tense, etc. How do I determine which tense is most appropriate for a scene? So it's kind of 2 questions, one about tenses and the other one about instructing an editor on making a book better.
I'll take the second one first, and just because I think the important thing, just like we were talking about beta readers, the important thing about getting somebody who works in your genre and who has the ability and the qualifications to feed you back. A good editor, getting a good editor is the most important thing, not giving them instructions. A good editor doesn't need instructions from the author. In fact, all the communication comes, you could just give them your book. So that's the only communication you need to have with them. And they will tell you the problems. And so in a sense, that's what you're paying for. You can sit back and relax into that help and that feedback. You don't have to help them in advance, as it were. With regard to tenses, I'm guessing that perhaps in your writing as a question, you meant to say past, present, and future, and that perhaps you mixed tenses and got a negative response to that, because I cannot imagine that there would be a negative response if you had been consistent in your tenses, but it's very common to get a negative response if you change tenses, even if you do it really well and you're doing it for literary effect and you know exactly why you want to do it that way. You need to have good reasons to be doing that, because it does confuse the reader. Anything that confuses the reader should go unless it's absolutely necessary to what you're trying to achieve as an author. So if you've mixed your tenses, so for example, you are writing in the present tense and you're doing flashbacks in past tense, it isn't actually necessary to do that. Historical past is the sort of most commonly used tense in a book, and it's perfectly acceptable for sort of the current story and the backstory. So in short, don't mix tenses unless you have to.
Yeah, and it's really hard to write in present tense. It's really hard. And this is what I just did for this short story. And what was so interesting is I did the first draft and then I edited it and I was like, oh my goodness, this is a wreck, because I tried to write in present and there was not a flashback but her thoughts. And then I went through again, and then I went through again. The fourth edit, I was still finding words where I'd written in the wrong tense. But I was trying really, really hard
not to. Yeah, absolutely. It happens all the time. After the Rising and Before the Fall are written in present tense. Actually present tense for the current story and the backstory. So and I have that all the time. I just don't know how that happens.
Yeah,
the tense slips into past. We're so used to, you know, if you tell a story about what happened to you at breakfast this morning, you won't tell it in present tense. You'll tell it in past tense. If it happened 2 seconds ago, you're still going to be telling it in past tense. So we're so accustomed to past tense. So again, if you're using present tense, and I was for a reason, if you're using present tense, do have a reason. It's kind of in fashion at the moment, present tense. It's also in fashion to have 2 different present tenses from 2 different people with 2 different perspectives. That's a very fashionable sort of structure at the moment. But don't get pulled into doing those kinds of things.
Especially with your first book.
Absolutely.
Just write it in the past tense.
Keep it simple, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Kate says, and this is an interesting question, if you're a teenager, is it okay for you to self-publish a book before you go to school? And then she says, I know you don't have to go to a school for writing, but I want to. Is there anything bad about self-publishing? So I have a couple of questions here. Is Kate a member of the Alliance? Because I didn't know we had younger people.
We don't have anybody under 18 that I'm aware of, but having said that, we don't say you have to be over 18 or make anybody sign anything. So, and we don't know every single member. Not every single member, joins with their social media profiles or whatever. Not every member is part of the group. So it's possible. If not, I don't know how
this question happened, but it's fine. We'll answer the question, because I get a lot of questions from teenagers on the Creative Pen, and I basically say, please write as much as you want. One of my biggest regrets is not writing, is basically getting shut down at school doing English literature A-level, being told the only thing you could write was sort of The Catcher in the Rye or something. And so definitely write, whatever age you are. And you don't need to go to school. And I presume Kate means there like a university or a college. You don't need a degree in writing to be a writer. I don't have a degree in writing. You don't either, right?
Nope.
No. You know, Stephen King doesn't.
No. And, you know, it's a bit of a hobby horse of mine that most of the academic courses that have jumped up around creative writing are not very productive for most people. They're very expensive. They're another form of the sort of need that some writers have for validation, and also perhaps for deadlines and, you know, structure and a group and social. I mean, there are good reasons to do it, don't get me wrong. But if what you want to do is become a professional writer, somebody who earns their living by their words, then there are far better ways to spend the 3 years you would spend getting a creative writing degree or a creative writing master's. You know, sitting and actually creating the book, learning what it feels like to be on your own in a room with nobody to save you from the blank page, and you know, how your execution falls short of your vision and so on. These are the lessons you need to learn. Do you have what it takes to kind of pick yourself up from failure? Do you have what it takes to go in there, go through the 7 painstaking stages of a process and get a book in your hand? It's not easy. If it was, everybody would be doing it.
It can be fun, people. If you're a teenager, don't let Orna bring you down.
It's had a hard few weeks.
Yeah, clearly. I will just also point young writers in the direction of Wattpad.com, WATTPAD.com, which is a great community of young people, young adults. Brilliant stuff going on Wattpad. A lot of young people just writing on Wattpad, and it can be a community. You don't have to be alone in a room. You can be online with millions of other young people, not the oldies like us.
Exactly. No, Wattpad's brilliant.
And also the NaNoWriMo has a young writers program, ywp.nanowrimo.com, I think it is, and that is brilliant at helping young people write. I think it's 20,000 words in a month or something. So, and whatever age, I know they have like 9-year-olds do that and all kinds of things. So whatever age you are, or if you're listening and you have children, grandchildren, whatever, I think we want an outburst of creativity. As far as I'm concerned, everyone who writes a book will buy and read hundreds more than they will ever write. So we want everyone in the world to write a book. We are in the abundance business.
Absolutely. And the last part of your question, is self-publishing a bad thing? I'm guessing from
Clearly not.
Well, we're not going to tell you that it is, because we both think it's wonderful. But I'm assuming from the question that, you know, you're perhaps thinking of a career in publishing or in writing and wondering if it will damage your prospects or whatever. And I would say that you shouldn't worry about that at all. Just carry on.
Carry on. Okay, Joan says, I design my own book covers, sometimes using my own artwork, sometimes buying ready-made covers. My question is, if I download photographs from the internet, am I breaking copyright?
Yes, probably, depending on whether they're Creative Commons licensed or not. So unless you have reason to know that they are copyright free, you should avoid that. We inadvertently used an image recently, and you know, we had to pay handsomely for what was effectively a blog image just sent to us by a writer who contributed to our blog, who didn't realize that
really?
And it was a Getty image, and
oh no, they're so expensive.
They're so and they're so on it. It's their way of earning money now. They have people just perpetually on it, and a lot of the image bureaus are like that. So unless you know it's copyright free, assume it is not.
Yeah, so the best thing is to search for royalty free photos. Even if they're Creative Commons, they have to be, and if you use pictures for a book cover which you sell, they have to be Creative Commons commercial. So I share my photos online as Creative Commons non-commercial. So you can't use my photos on your book covers, but you can use them on a blog, for example. So this is really important. There are lots of subcategories, but the best thing is Google royalty-free photos, and make sure, and don't use Getty. Use sites like Big Stock Photo, or 123 Photo or something. It is, there's tons of them, but just Google royalty free photos, and that will help. Okay, Joe, not me, says, I've worked with a small business development centre connected to our local university with various business issues. They don't have a strong resource in publishing. I don't have a good understanding of possible funding to help an independent publisher. All the regional and national funding I've researched are for not-for-profits. Is it true that an independent publisher cannot function as a not-for-profit? Do you have any suggestions for finding funding sources?
Well, it's an interesting approach, funding, seeking funding for, is it your own book, or are you talking about setting up a publisher that will publish other work? Certainly there are grants available and there are funds available for publishers, but, and it is possible for, I presume this is a question from somebody in the UK actually, but perhaps not, but I'm going to assume that it is and respond from the UK perspective because that's the only expertise area-wise I would have, though I think a similar sort of scenario pertains in the US, where there's a larger pot of funding, but it's the same sort of thing. So only particular kinds of publishing houses get funding. First of all, they have to be of artistic and cultural merit, which will be judged by a board and so on. And there will be lots of hoops to jump through, and you will only ever get a small portion of the amount of money you need. I think both Joanna and I and everybody in ALLi, practically, I can't think of anybody who would feel that the best way of funding a book is by selling it to people who want to buy it, rather than seeking funding, in that sort of way. But if there are more details to this question that are not immediately clear, perhaps you'd follow up with an email. I'm not entirely sure even exactly what it is you're planning.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, your first book, you have to invest money. And the way most of us do that, certainly I did, the first 3 years, I worked a day job like everyone else. And instead of spending the money on a hobby, which, people spend money on their hobbies. You want to go skiing, it's going to cost you some money. You want to take up knitting, it's going to cost you less than skiing. But, everyone pays for their hobby. So what most people do with their first self-published book is the money that they would have spent on a hobby, they spend on their book. So they get a professional cover, professional editor. Self-publishing costs nothing, and check out the Alliance of Independent Authors in the members only section, how to self-publish a book or whatever it's called. There's help on how to do that. So essentially, I would say that you're using your own money to invest in starting something that then may give you back money. And with that money you get from sales, you then generally invest that in the next book. And only after doing that a number of times will you actually start making enough money to take it out and pay yourself. This is a longer term prospect.
It's worth saying also that the fact that you're asking about funding leads me to believe that perhaps you are in an area where that would never actually become a commercial viability for you. In other words, that you're writing in a restricted genre that just doesn't have the readership that you can expect to grow and eventually pay yourself back. And you know that already before you even start. So yeah, as I said, if you'd like to continue that conversation, perhaps just drop us a line and give us some more details and we can take it further. Yeah.
Okay, Kelly says, what do you think of BookBub ads in respect, and Goodreads deals? Are they worth a try? I'm skeptical about BookBub ads because the ad is showed at the end of the email where there's no guarantee the reader will see it, and we don't know how much a Goodreads deal will cost. Well, I'll take this one because as of right now, end of June 2016, Goodreads deals are not open to authors, and BookBub ads are not open to everybody. BookBub, as in you can still apply for a BookBub, which your book goes out in their email, but BookBub ads are only open to a certain number of beta people. I am in that beta program at the moment, and I'm finding the adverts very good. I'm getting a good return. I'm very happy with it. So I think this thing about the ad is only showed at the end of the email, so there's no guarantee. I don't know what's happening there, but I've had emails from lots of people who've seen my ads and the returns are good. So I would say to people, try these things. I mean, again, we talked before about how fast things move on. Only a few years ago, not even, it's a few weeks ago, Pixel of Ink would have been, you know, up there. Now it's not available anymore. Goodreads deals, I will be in as soon as we can. I'll be on that. You should be on these things as soon as you can, because things will change. And often the people who are in there early actually, you know, like the 99-cent people who made massive money right at the beginning of Kindle, people who jumped into KDP Select early, you know, often the first movers do get an advantage, like any business. So this is something I've learned the hard way. You know, I've kind of held back things like Facebook ads. I should have got in there at the beginning, but I didn't. So all these things, get in immediately. So basically, you can't have any opinion about Goodreads deals and a very small opinion about BookBub ads, because these are not open yet. But keep an eye on them and jump on them when you can, because both Goodreads and BookBub have an audience of readers, and that is what we want. Nothing from you?
No, I cannot add a single, except to say the question was, should you give it a try? And yes, always give these things a try. If
with a small budget.
Yeah. With it, exactly. That's exactly, you took the words out of my mouth again. Yes. So don't invest too much at the beginning, tweak around, play with them. People are sometimes, you know, sometimes think an ad, I've spent my money, that's it. It's an easy fix. It's a sort of a magic bullet. In our business, it's not like that. Be prepared to, with Facebook ads, for example, Joanna very generously spent some time showing me all about Facebook ads, but I know I'm not actually ready and set up well enough for the Facebook ads to deliver for me just yet. So it'll be another couple of months before I actually get to doing it. So you need to be set up, and you need to have the time and space to tweak the ad, because the ad is a form of writing in and of itself. You know, getting that copyright on the ad, getting the picture or the image right, that's going to track, getting the offer right, and expressing it in the language that's actually going to get your readers across. And then the landing page, and you know, the whole thing is a sort of a little mini creation in itself, and needs to be approached that way. And lots of trial and error to see what works and see what doesn't work. So none of these ads are magic bullets, I would say. Perhaps, you know, as you say, for early adopters to get in at the beginning, and that is lovely if you do that and you are one of those people, but that tide goes out again. What we're building all the time is continuous growth, you know, slowly or quickly or whatever, but step by step, getting a little bit closer to where we want to be, and expanding our readership and holding them in place, so that we're not just kind of running around trying, you know, every new thing and not understanding who our reader is. That's the most important thing, and what we have to offer and how we're offering it, and maximizing that.
Yeah, well, I wanted to talk about that a minute, the offer being the important thing. And I'm a bit of a rant in the forum earlier about box sets, which I, you know, and also another author who said, you know, I have 6 books and I barely made any money at all, but all 6 books are standalone. So I just want to say on box sets, right now, I think about 50% of my income, which is significant from book sales, is box sets. So essentially, if you're writing a series, which we all know from lots of evidence is very important if you want to make money from books, because once a reader gets into it, they want to know more. And I can tell you, we just downloaded Game of Thrones, the latest season, and we're just going to totally binge that for the next few days. We're just going to just stuff our heads with Game of Thrones. And that's what people want with your books. They want to binge. So what I did actually yesterday, I've uploaded a new 8-book box set. So my Arcane series is now 8 books, 8-book box set to iBooks only, and put that at 50% of the full price. It's still $16. Now, $16, of which I get, what, 14 or something, is a really good amount of money to get, and the reader gets really good value. And iBooks prefer to merchandise, and iBooks and Kobo prefer to merchandise stuff where they can get more money and the author can get more money. So why wouldn't you do this? But you can only do this for fiction and non-fiction if you have multiple books either in a series or that relate. So Orna, you could do a Go Creative box set.
Oh, I will.
Exactly.
That's what I meant about not being really geared up, because I have written standalone generally. I mean, I have 2 books of a trilogy, and 1 book of a trilogy, and 1 other standalone. I'm completely just responded to the creative urge and did not approach this in a commercial way, and that's fine. But I'm not about to waste Facebook ads on that. I know that's
on
not
a single book. It's incredibly hard. So that's the thing. Any of this paid advertising is so much better with box sets. And I've tried like a ton of BookBub ads in the last couple of weeks. All the single book box sets ads I've pretty much turned off, except for 1 non-fiction. All the box sets I've turned up because they make money. So why wouldn't you? So if you are someone who's listening and you're like, I've got all these books and I'm not making any money, and they've got good covers and they're well edited, the reason is because you're not giving readers what they want, which is often more than 1 book that is related. So that's my rant. I get really annoyed when people say that box sets are somehow devaluing books. Anyway.
No, absolutely. Go for it.
Moving on. James says, my question is about finding bloggers. It seems to be a powerful marketing strategy to find influential bloggers to blog about my work or offer guest blogs. I suppose there is a good method, which is Google.
Professor Google.
Professor Google. Can I Google that for you? But also wonder if you believe there are other ways across various genres. So let's break that down, Orna. Do you use, you do blog, but do you use guest blogging? Do you network with other bloggers, etc.?
I have done in the past. I haven't done much of late. I will do again. I think bloggers are brilliant, absolutely fantastic. And the Alliance of Independent Authors wouldn't exist without you and other people who have blogged about it. So, they are just great. It absolutely, you are 100% right. What's the questioner's name again?
James,
you're absolutely right. This is a research job. You need to get the right people. So I do see very often in the Alliance people going to great efforts to do a big blog tour, and it's either the wrong people that they've chosen, subject-wise or genre-wise again, or treatment-wise, or that they just don't have a following. So you need to get bloggers that are speaking to significant. They don't have to be the top bloggers in the world, but they do have to have a significant audience that you don't have. They need to be bringing you to new people, and it needs to be sizable for it to have an impact. The second thing to say about that is that as soon as somebody has that influence, they are very, very busy, and they're getting approaches all the time. So, you're back to sort of, when blogging started, it was pretty wide open. And if you had something good to say and you were able to say it well, you could get a guest post quite easily, and it could move the needle for you. Now it's as hard, I would say, to get a good blogger to a desirable book reviewer to review your work as somebody who works, for one of the major press. They have the same sorts of constraints, just so much space, only so much time to do the reading, only so much time to do the writing, and so on. I do know people who kind of look at the top 50 reviewers in Amazon and work their way through them and try to get them to review, and with varying degrees of success. So it's not that hard to find the right people, but it can be hard to actually get them to take your work.
Yeah, and I would say there's also a difference between fiction and non-fiction. I think if you've written a non-fiction book, then blogging and podcasting, hardcore, get on some podcasts, because you get far more time. You might get half an hour interview, an hour interview even, which gives you much more depth. And I mean, I have 5 months schedule already planned on my podcast, with people and I get pitched all the time, but it has to be something that my audience want and that I'm interested in for me to want it. And I think, you know, you can get guest posts on blogs, but as Orna said, you know, they have to have the right audience. So non-fiction, again, is much easier. If you've written a book on pet care, you can go to, you know, blogs that have dog stuff and cat stuff and you know, talk about 10 tips for your pet care. And then at the end it says, Orna Ross is the author of this book on pet care. And the link to the book is, yeah, the link to the book is after the information on that's useful to the customer. For fiction, it's much harder. So, you know, we're taking your books, you know, your Irish historical stuff. You could go on Irish blogs that are about Irish life and talk about being an expat in London or something, and then have a bit about the book. But when you're a fiction author, your stuff is generally not, I've written a book. Nobody cares. They're more interested in what are the aspects around that are interesting. So I tend to focus on travel stuff. But again, it's really, you know, I think blog tours are almost a waste of time for fiction. I think you're much better spending that time writing a novella or a short story and putting that out for free. The amount of time you would be writing all these different blogs. I know people who've done like 100-stop blog tour. How do you even think of all the stuff to write in all of these things? It drives you nuts. So be really careful with your time and think strategically before you act. And I think the person who's done this most effectively with fiction is Rachel Abbott in the UK. And Rachel has a stack of stuff on her blog about how she targeted bloggers and people and reviewers for her fiction. She's a crime writer in the UK, one of the UK's top. I think she is the UK's top crime indie.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, she's sold a lot of books, and she'll be coming back on my podcast in a month or so, and we'll be going back into it. But she is probably the only fiction author I know who's done blog tours and made loads of it.
And I'd be interested to hear if she still feels, because I think this feeds back in again to what we were talking about earlier about things working for a while and then being not necessarily the best thing. So I'd be interested to hear if Rachel still, I know she's changed her marketing plan completely, whether she still relies on that strategy as much as she did. I suspect not. But however, having said all of that, you know, if you get the right people and they do have the right, I think for fiction, really what you're looking for is good review sites where people go to read about your kind of book and respect the person who's giving the opinion and basically buy it's kind of word of mouth, digital word of mouth, if you like. That can be worthwhile. You might want to. Some of our members have had very good success with NetGalley, which is a company that kind of organizes reviews for you. I have used them to not great success, I have to say, but I know others who have used it well. And all of these things are time and effort, and you have to weigh them up against whether, you know, getting enough books together for a box set is actually ultimately
that is a better use of your time, and then use some paid ads on that. Seriously, having just 3 books in a series, yes, it might take you 2 years, even 3 years. Hopefully it won't take you more. Might do.
Might do, Joanna.
Okay, it might do.
But been known to happen.
Okay, but then I have to say, I don't think you will if your goal is to make some money, and if it's not, it doesn't matter, do whatever the hell you want. But if your goal is to make some money, then 3 books in a series is the baseline. Like, I don't think anyone is making decent money with 3 different standalones, or even more than that. I think it's in fiction, certainly. I think it's in, you know, very, very hard. I don't know why there's this myth of overnight success with 1 book. Like, it, you know, I was writing about this in my mindset book, but, you know, we were in Spain looking at Picasso exhibition, and they trace his work from his early years as a child all the way through to when he's like, I think he died at 92 or something, right? And the visual art world values the periods in an artist's life and will show his early work and show his development and say this was this period and this was this period. And they don't expect a debut artist to be at the top of their game. Whereas in publishing, there's this thing about debut authors and the first book being this thing. Whereas actually, of course, we get better every time we write a book, and, you know, our work develops and our voice develops, and actually you're going to make more money, satisfy more readers, and be happier creatively later on. So there's another rant.
Yeah. The debut author thing was really a moment in time. It arose out of a sort of a thing that happened in trade publishing where there was a lot of conglomeration, and the mid-list author that developing that idea of slowly developing an author because of the really just the business of books and the way it was structured and with returns and everything else, and nobody making very much money out of anything. It essentially got to the point where if you had a book and it hadn't sold immediately, you were less likely to be able to get a publishing deal than if you had never published before. So they were putting out sort of 25 debut authors, knowing that one of those 25, but not knowing which, would actually stick and they would get their money back. So the sums were done on that basis. And so for a period of about 10 to 15 years, it was all about first books. And it did a real disservice to writers, I think.
I think that's still happening. I mean, at London Book Fair, we were there was 8-figure deals on debut. It's like, what the hell? I always feel sorry for these people. Not very much, because the second book is never going to live up to it.
It's so difficult. You look at where, so few of those people
a few of them are still here. That's what people say, because if you have such a big deal, yeah, you've paid off your house and you're set for life, but if your creativity is then stunted by the fact that you will never ever write something that's worth that much money again, it's really hardcore. They do say that, like all these people who start out, not all of them obviously, but a lot of them who get these big deals disappear. So better to be slow and steady and win the race, be the tortoise.
Next question, please.
Yeah, all right, sorry. Okay, so Natalie sent in a lot of questions. So Natalie, because you sent in so many, we can't do them all, and we're also running out of time. So perhaps
just one more, maybe. Yeah,
we will do one more, because this has been doing the rounds this month. So this lady, Pauline Creedon, there was a few blog posts about this on Kboards, that she lost access to her Amazon publishing account. It was shut down because of suspected illegal downloads on KDP Select. And people have been talking about this, that there are these scammy companies that will, put up random books and then get loads of clicks and page reads on them. And to make those companies seem less suspicious, they will pick other books within KDP Select and intersperse them, so they are not picked up as just targeting their own books. So basically this one author had her account shut down. I don't know about the follow-up. This was 16th of June, so it was at least 10 days ago, but essentially my comment on this is obviously if you're not in KDP Select, this is not a big deal, and I'm only in there for some of my translations, not for my main income. So if you are wide, then they're not going to target you because you don't get Select reads. However, I don't think that's a good reason not to suddenly come out of Select if you only have 1 or 2 books, or you choose to do just Select. I think that this is one of those cases that's probably will be resolved, and that Amazon tries their best, as much as we do love Amazon. They can be difficult sometimes, and I don't believe you should be exclusive with them, but if you choose to be, don't react by pulling everything out just because some blog reports that some author had this happen. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands of us out there. And yeah, I believe this will calm down. I think it's another storm in a teacup. I think authors love drama. Is that true? Do you think authors just love drama?
I never knew how much until we had Kboards. I can't even go there.
No, me, I don't go there.
I can't go there because and the overreaction. But then you see the overreaction of the markets to Brexit, and I think people love drama, and it's kind of good they do.
Yeah,
so
they want up
stories. But yeah, particularly an Amazon story. If something like this happened on Kobo, there'd be a quiet exchange of emails and we would never hear anything about it. But as soon as there's an Amazon story, there is, such nervousness about Amazon's position in the market that even those who do, owe their living to them, and as you say, we love Amazon and what they have done to the book market as a disruptor, at the same time, there's all this nervousness about what if they do, and it's just the power thing, isn't it? So, and it's a horrible feeling, I'm sure, to have your book taken down, and I completely get that. But it's like the reviews that sometimes get taken down in error. from Amazon's, policy of not having back scratching going on and sock puppetry and so on. Overall, it's much better that they are taking action. Of course, if it happens to you, you don't like it, but it's not a reason for every author in the world to jump in and start Amazon bashing and saying, how could they do this to this lovely poor, the David and Goliath thing all the time. So to me, it's another overreaction story. So of course, I feel sorry for the author involved. Perhaps it's even sorted by now. I certainly hope so.
Exactly, and I think that's really important to realise. Okay, so we're almost out of time. What is happening in the next month, Orna? Anything we need to share or talk about?
Yeah, we are working on publication. So we have just this massive sort of body of knowledge and content, as they call it. Between the blog, the Fringe, and all the different sort of stuff that's come our way. So what we're doing is we're trying to restructure that in ways that will be more accessible. We've taken on a publications editor who's going to work on self-publishing quarterly, which will kind of bring the 3 Fringes and our partner directory into 4 different publications with the highlights from the blog and so on. So we're kind of working on that, and we're getting geared up, I can't believe it, for Frankfurt in October, and getting ready for the Frankfurt Fringe, just starting on that. Yeah. And you?
Doing a book launch tomorrow, and again, as things change, this time, I mean, my previous book launches are mainly just done emails, tweets, some guest posts, but I'm not even doing guest posts now. I'm focusing on email and also Facebook ads and video. So I did my first Facebook Live.
Yes, it went really well, I saw.
Oh, it's amazing. I'd encourage anyone, if you have a Facebook page, you can only do it on a page, so we can't do it in the ALLi group, which is a real shame. Or we could do this in there. It's because you can now do 2 people, or they're bringing it out that you can have 2 people on Facebook Live as well, and it's absolutely brilliant. I'm doing another one this weekend, if anyone's interested. But it will, so I'm doing some live videos. We've got video ads, we've got BookBub ads. So it's interesting how my own launch strategy is a lot more towards paid and email than it ever has been before. So reflecting on that, and then I'll be into the next book.
Great, good for you. Okay, well, happy writing.
Yes, so basically we will be back. I'm just checking the old diary. The Filofax.
She is our diarist.
Tuesday, 26th of July. We will be back. Same time.
Great.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone.
See you then.
Next month.
Bye.
Happy writing.
And publishing.
And publishing.
Bye
and
now.
marketing.